Hello everyone, what is up? It is me, AlbyMTG, and as you guys could tell by the title of this video and what you guys are seeing on the screen, Magic the Gathering Online has had Dominaria out for 2 days, meaning that they've hosted 2 standard events, or 2 days worth of competitive standard leagues, and we've gotten the data from all of them, and I put together 8 deck lists from the Dominaria standard that have gone 5-0 in these competitive standard leagues. I tried to pick ones that had Dominaria cards in them so that we could kind of see some of the new cards, what kind of decks they're going in, and where the format might shape out in terms of Dominaria cards. Of course, decks like Red Green Monsters did well too, but I found Red Green Monsters list at 5-0 that didn't have any Dominaria cards in it, and that's no fun. We want to talk about the new fancy Dominaria cards. So all 8 of these lists have at least a little something from Dominaria in them, whether it's just a little bit of innovation or whether it's a whole new archetype. You guys are going to see that here. And so, like I said, picked out 8 deck lists, and we're just going to go ahead and take a look at them here. To start off, the first one we have here is Mono Green Monument. This one revolving around the fact that Llanowar Elves is now reprinted in Standard, Llanowar Elves being a 1-mana mana dork, and then the just sheer power level of Steel Leaf Champion, a 3-drop that with the power of Llanowar Elves, you can get this thing out on turn 2, and then you can have a 5/4 that can't be blocked by creatures with power 2 or less. It's just absolutely ridiculous. And then, of course, big curve toppers, like since you're playing a mono green creatures deck, you have Galta in this list as well. There's a few artifacts, some vehicles in here, like Heart of Kiran is in here, Aethersphere Harvester is here as well, and then 1 copy of Sky Sovereign console flagship. Also to be noted, just with kind of how the format is laid out here, you can see the deck name is up here in the top left, next to the player on Magic Online who did get the 5-0 with it, so of course credit where credit is due. These are not my lists, these are all lists from whoever you'll see up here in the on the player screen. Based on whatever deck it is. Here you have the price over here for how much it would cost you in tickets on Magic Online to play, and how much it would cost you in paper to build the deck. So for this deck, you can see it's a little bit cheaper in paper, which is kind of surprising, but nonetheless, this is a pretty sweet deck. It looks like in the sideboard, there's no new innovations from Dominaria, but the big things being the addition of Llanowar Elves to help your game plan start off a lot faster, and then the addition of Steel Leaf Champion just being a 5-power 3-drop. Here we have a 5-0 list from Nightbot, who was playing Mono Red, and the big change in Mono Red is there's now 4 mainboard copies of Goblin Chain Whirler. Chain Whirler being a 3/3 first strike, and when it enters the battlefield, it deals 1 damage to each opponent and each creature and planeswalker they control, so it can help get the pesky blockers out of the way so the Mono Red deck can continuously keep getting in. Even if this dies to a removal spell, it at least got in for 1 damage, and if it doesn't die to a removal spell, it's going to be fairly hard to remove it being a 3/3 first striker. And then the other big innovation that I saw out of the Mono Red deck list, I honestly didn't think that there would be any innovation. I thought that people would just be running the same list, but like I said, Goblin Chain Whirler now being a 4 of in this list. The big thing that I'm seeing here is 2 sideboard copies of Siege Gang Commander. Siege Gang Commander being a 5-drop in the deck, and the 5-drop spot in red was super competitive before, because you could see that Glorybringer basically took over, but if you look through this entire deck list, there is no copies of Glorybringer. They took out the sideboard copies of Glorybringer and replaced it with Siege Gang Commander. I think that's super, super sweet. I don't know if that's correct or not. We'll have to wait to see how the format ends up playing out, but I do think it's really cool that this user Nightboat here got this 5-0 list running 2 copies of Siege Gang Commander in the sideboard over the 2 copies of Glorybringer in the sideboard that most mono red decks would be running. Here, also something else just to kind of point out before we go, 23 mountains, 1 scavenger grounds. No Sunscorched Deserts in this list. Normally the mono red decks would run Sunscorched Desert, just play a land and get in, an additional point of damage for free just by playing your land drop. But because the Goblin Chain Whirler does have 3 red in the mana symbol, it would be really unfortunate if you were stuck with some colorless deserts instead of red producing lands. So as you can see here, he did cut all 4 of the Sunscorched Deserts that most lists would normally play, and is instead running 23 mountains and 1 scavenger grounds as his 24 land mana base. Here we have the deck that excites me the most. I'm so glad that someone managed to do it. Captain Sea Dog, congratulations on your 5-0 with black-green Saproling Tribal. Absolutely fantastic. People were wondering, did we get enough black-green Saproling support to make Saproling a thing? and it looks like there has been enough to make it into a thing. 4 copies here of Spore Crown Thallid, of course, that's an auto inclusion, a 2/2 for 2, and then each other creature you control that's a fungus or saproling gets +1/+1. The deck also features 2 copies of Slimefoot the Stowaway, which is a super sweet legendary card that helps you create some saprolings and does some stuff when your saprolings die. And another just little piece of something to help improve the deck. They did get Woodland Cemetery, so that makes the mana a little bit better for the list. And then they're also just running basically every Saproling card that you can ever find. 4 copies of Spore Swarm, an instant that creates 3 1/1 green Saprolings. There's 4 of those in the deck. 4 copies of Saproling Migration here in the deck as well. In terms of removal spells, they're playing 4 copies of Fatal Push, as well as 2 copies of Cast Down, another new removal spell from Dominaria. The deck also runs 4 copies of Llanowar Elves, again, just kind of to get their game plan started off a little bit faster. And then a card which was super, super strong and limited, and I'm glad to see that it's finally seeing play here, is Tendershoot Dryad. At the beginning of each upkeep, create a 1/1 green Saproling creature token, so that includes your opponent's turn. So during your upkeep, you'll make a Saproling. During their upkeep, you'll make a Saproling. And then if Ascend is triggered, if you're making enough Saproling tokens, then you'll be able to have the Ascend triggered, of course. Then Saprolings you control get +2/+2 as long as you have the City's Blessing when you have a Tendershoot Dryad out, which is super, super sweet. Absolutely love this deck. It's fairly cheap on Magic Online too. I think this is the cheapest list out of the list that we're going to be looking at here at 63 tickets online. So I think this is one that I'm definitely going to try out. I'll probably end up streaming a little bit with this at some point because this deck just looks super, super fun. So again, congratulations to Cap'n Sea Dog with the 5-0 in the competitive standard league, playing black-green Saprolings. Absolutely awesome. Here we have an Esper Control deck, 2 copies of Lyra Dawnbringer, the new Baneslayer Angel, as kind of a finisher, along with 1 copy of the Scarab God and 2 Torrential Gearhulks. And that is a giant removal package here in terms of 22 spells and 8 enchantments. So basically you're looking at 30 removal spells here. 30 removal spells or counter spells from these cards here. There's no outside of Glimmer of Genius, looks like there's no Hieroglyphic Illumination. So yeah, 3 copies of Glimmer of Genius in terms of card draw, and then everything else here is either a counter spell or removal. Again, Cast Down, again, seeing some more play here in this 5-0 list. Destroy target non-legendary creature, again from Dominaria, as well as a full playset of the new white removal spell Seal Away. So very, very nice list here. It looks like there's another 2 copies of Lyra Dawnbringer here on the side, so a full playset throughout the 75 cards. And it looks like that's about it in terms of Dominaria cards. So again, just kind of a nice Esper Control list. I was expecting to see Teferi, Hero of Dominaria in some of the control lists, but I think I like what this person did using Lyra Dawnbringer as the finisher instead of trying to go for the Planeswalker finisher with Teferi. Next list here we have Mono White Aggro. This list is super, super sweet as well. Has 4 copies of Banalish Marshal, which is a super strong, super powerful card. 3-drop for 3 mana that also buffs all of your other creatures. You're seeing the play of the new 1-drop here, Dauntless Bodyguard. 1 white for a 2/1 that can protect another creature at some point, and then Skymarcher Aspirant also being a 1-mana 2/1. So with that being said, you have the opportunity to play 8 2/1 creatures for 1 mana, which really helps your aggressive starts with this deck. Another card here from Dominaria, Teshar Ancestors Apostle. This card helps you return some of the creatures from your graveyard to the battlefield, which is super nice because actually all of your creatures outside of Teshar, which Teshar again is just a 1 of, all of your creatures outside of Teshar can be brought back if you trigger her ability. And then there was just 1 copy, or actually, I'm sorry, 4 copies of Knight of Grace here, also in this deck, which for the deck is essentially just a 2/2 first strike hexproof from black, but sometimes you'll be playing against the black opponent who has the ability to give your Knight of Grace +1/+0 and turn it into a 3/2 first striker as well. But just the 2/2 first striker being strong enough here, you can see in this list. And then I believe the last card from Dominaria that's added to this list is a full playset of the Mythic Rare History of Benalia. Creates you some Knight creature tokens, and then it'll buff your Knights. after the saga reaches lore counter number 3. And then there's just a bunch of random knights scattered throughout the deck as well. So Banalish Marshal is a knight, Dauntless Bodyguard is a knight, and I'm sure that there's more in here. Yeah, Knight of Grace is a knight, of course. So the History of Benalia puts in a lot of work for this mono white aggro list. This list looks super similar, however, this is more of a mono-white vehicles list, which is why I kind of put them separately. Also, it was the only list I could find that was running any copies of this man right here, Karn, Scion of Urza. Very nice to see that he was at least in one 5-0 list throughout the course of these past 2 days. So you can really take advantage, because you're playing a lot of artifacts here, you can really take advantage of the -2 ability of creating a 0/0 colorless construct artifact creature token. With this creature gets +1/+1 for each artifact you control. Because you're playing so many artifacts, you're playing things like Scrapheap Scrounger, a nice aggressive artifact. You're playing Servo Exhibition, which creates 2 colorless Servo artifact tokens, as well as Sram's Expertise, which again creates 3 Servo tokens, which are artifacts as well. So you're really making a lot of artifacts here, and then as most vehicle builds would have a full playset of Heart of Kiran, which of course is an artifact as well, and then Aethersphere Harvester, a full playset, which again is an artifact as well. So very, very nice list here. I felt like there was enough difference between the mono white aggro list and this mono white vehicles artifact list that I could put them into two separate archetypes here. Even though it does share the Dauntless Bodyguard, this one has enough artifacts in it to where you're seeing Toolcraft Exemplar, seeing a little bit of a resurgence here as well. And then also just 2 copies of Gideon here as well. So I kind of like how this list has the possibility of going wide, or it has the possibility of making your creatures quite large using Banalish Marshal to buff your tokens that you're creating. And then even if that doesn't go well, you have good late game play with the use of Karn, Scion of Urza, and with the use of Gideon of the Trials as well. Here we have your basic black-green Constrictor list. I also did not expect black-green Constrictor to get anything, but there is a very cool innovation here in this list. Of course, there's the 4 copies of Llanowar Elves. That's kind of basic. Basically, any deck that's running green in this format now is basically just running a full playset of Llanowar Elves, so that can just kind of be expected. Something that they didn't have last time for the black-green Constrictor decks is now that they have Woodland Cemetery, that provides a little bit more mana fixing, so the deck can be a little bit more consistent. But what you can see here from Random Drooler, the innovation they added in was a full playset of my friend Zuby, Magic with Zuby. This was his preview card, a full playset of Adventurous Impulse. Look at the top 3 cards of your library. You may reveal a creature or land card from among them and put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. So it's some nice card selection in green, and since you're running 29 creatures and 24 lands, the only possibility of you not hitting, of not getting something off of this would be the 7 spells here. But of course, if you're using one of the Adventurous Impulses to cast it, then you're only looking at a possibility maximum of 6 spells being left in your deck. So I think that's super, super sweet, the innovation to add an Adventurous Impulse. It fits really nicely into this deck, and I really like that choice here from Random Drooler. Outside of that, they didn't really add anything else from Dominaria, but I was very happy to see that Adventurous Impulse was seeing a little bit of play here, and that someone wanted to include that into a nice creature deck. Because I don't think, when we go back to the mono-green Monument list, of course, this would be a deck that you would expect the potential for this to have. Also, just kind of on a side note, they labeled the deck Monogreen Monument, but it's not actually running any copies of Ronus's Monument, so I'm guessing this was just kind of a mistake in terms of deck naming on MTG Goldfish, but that might be something that they want to fix eventually. But nonetheless, this actually was running 0 copies of Adventurous Impulse here, despite having 26 creatures and 23 lands, so you could have a pretty high hit rate off of your Adventurous Impulse in this deck as well, but it chose not to run it, and instead you can see it being played here as a full playset in the Black-Green Constrictor deck. And then here onto the last deck, I found that was a different archetype that had some new cards in it. We have blue-white tokens. The Abzan tokens deck was a deck that I played a lot against in the last standard season with Rivals of Ixalan. This one here takes a little bit of a change on it and goes for the blue-white route, so things like embalming your Champion of Wits, or embalming your, or not embalming, but using the Vizier of the Anointed as a way to find some of your cards with embalm, such as Anointer Priest or Sacred Cat as well. But aside from that, you are playing Teferi, Hero of Dominaria here in this list, which feels kind of weird to me. I feel like Teferi is normally where you would want a control deck around Teferi, but the choice of putting it here in this tokens deck I think is super interesting, and that's possibly something that we could see here in the future. Is if this blue-white tokens deck takes off, then we might see people cutting the Teferi because it's not supposed to be in the deck, or we could see people playing more copies of the Teferi because they really like how it ends up playing out against the meta. And then, of course, just other token producers like Servo Exhibition in here, but the big one that it got was History of Benalia. This deck is only running 2 copies of History of Benalia. I could definitely see that future versions might just want the full playset. History of Benalia is a very, very strong card, and creating 4 power worth of creatures if you have out an Anointed Procession, creating 4 power worth of creatures a turn is super, super powerful. And I think that this white-blue tokens deck definitely has some potential to it. So I hope you guys did enjoy the video. This has been 850 undefeated competitive standard league decks that I found that feature some of the new Dominaria cards. Again, the format's only been out on MTGO for like 2 days, so I'm sure that the format's going to shake up quite a bit, but these were 8 decks that I really enjoyed that I got to find here. So again, we'll go over them. This was just the mono-green aggro deck, the mono-red deck, black-green Saproling Tribal Esper Control, mono-white aggro, mono-white vehicles, black-green constrictor, and then again blue-white tokens. So again, I hope you guys did enjoy this video. If you guys did enjoy it and you found it informative, a thumbs up and a subscription would of course be appreciated. I would be very, very thankful of you guys if you were to do so. And if not, I fully understand, and I hope that you guys did enjoy the video anyway, and maybe you learned a little bit of something or got, some inspiration for what your standard deck this season might end up being. So I hope you guys did have a lot of fun watching this video. Hope you guys learned something, and I will see you guys here again tomorrow for yet another daily Magic the Gathering video.